Hi guys, today we're going to talk through your analytical paragraph writing for your first piece of assessment for the Crucible. This is the structure that you will need to use for your body paragraphs of your essay, and the same structure applies to each of the elements that you're going to discuss. So your thesis needs to be based on the statement that's listed in your task sheet. The thesis here is just a practice thesis and a practice question. You will need to refer to the statement that's on your task sheet because the wording is a little bit different. But this gives you an idea of how to form a thesis and just reminds you that your thesis needs to be made up of both fact and opinion. Okay, so you can use a range of different words instead of the ones listed here, but as long as it contains both the factual statement from the statement on your task sheet as well as your opinion is what you're arguing. So in this case, effectively has utilised is your opinion on the matter, and negatively represent and the destructive error are all opinionated comments. So you need to have both in order to have an effective thesis. So this is the structure that we're going to follow for both of your paragraphs for your essay. You need to make sure that each one of these steps here is followed and that you almost use it as a checklist when drafting your paragraph. So you need to focus on 2 to 3 narrative elements. With the word count, 2 is probably adequate, as 600, 800 words isn't a lot holistically. This paragraph here is a plot example, but the same structure applies whether you choose to talk about plot, characters, theme, or language. Themes and characters is usually a wise choice, as there is quite a lot of substance and good quotes that you can use when discussing them. So, to start off your paragraph, you need to start with your topic sentence here in this maroon colour. And your topic sentence needs to link to the thesis that you've created. Remember, your thesis needs to be individual. You need to have created it yourself, and it needs to be based off the statement on your task sheet. You need to clearly state in your topic sentence which narrative element you are talking about. So plot is clearly stated here, and then it also links to the thesis that it has been strategically crafted to negatively represent the McCarthy error. So there's part of our thesis there. So it's clear and to the point, doesn't need to be too wordy, just clearly state what narrative element is going to be discussed and what it's achieved. Then you need to explain that element and the topic in a bit more detail to give context to your reader. So this is in the navy colour. This is where you'll introduce the time period of McCarthyism and what was happening. If you're talking about characters, for example, this might be where you introduce which person you are going to be discussing in your character paragraph, not necessarily from the play, but maybe the fact that Miller has used characters within the play to represent real life people, and then introduce the person or people that you might be making a comparison to from the McCarthy era. If it was themes, this is where you would introduce the theme that was evident in the McCarthy era as well. Then you need to introduce your quote, or contextualize your quote. You cannot just place the quote in there. It has to be introduced so that it is cohesive and that it flows. This would link and flow on from the Navy stuff here. So you can't just have everything as separate sentences. They need to all link and be cohesive. So this introduces the quote to come. So there's the quote there. We don't just put the quote in. It introduces what we're going to talk about and it flows as a sentence. Okay, the quote and the introduction all make one sentence so that it links nicely. Make sure you reference your quote, where it's coming from, and you need to have at least 2 quotes per paragraph. Once you've given your quote, you then have to analyse the quote because it is an analytical essay, and without the analysis, your mark is going to drop significantly. So in that, you need to deconstruct the quote and what it means. So here, this is talking about fear doesn't travel well, it can warp judgment. So what are we talking about with the fear? We're talking about the fearful atmosphere and what it led to. Okay, and then what that means. So not just what's in the quote, but what it means or what's the point of using that quote. Then once you've done a bit of analysis in terms of the McCarthy error, whether it's for plot, character, or theme, you then need to make a link to the play. Okay, and the fact that there is characters in the play or themes in the play that resemble that of what was happening in the McCarthy error, just like this one does here. So it joins the two together. Then we follow the same structure. We contextualize the quote, and then we give the quote, then we analyze the quote again. You have to have 2 sets of these. So a quote from your stimulus documents that are in your task sheet, then a quote from the play to help make that comparison here. Once you have analysed your quote, this is when you then need to link back to your thesis, but also analyse whilst doing that. Okay, so this is where he's brought in the McCarthy error again, and overall what he's thought of it was one of warped judgment, which helps link to his quote that he's given. We've also could then maybe reflect back to this thesis here a bit more explicitly, okay, proving that he has effectively utilised the element of plot to negatively represent. But you also can't just restate the thesis, you've got to analyse in terms of it. So that's what he's done here with the warped judgment. Now, your first body paragraph to your second body paragraph has to be linked, so you need to have a linking sentence at the end. And that just introduces what the next paragraph is going to be about. If it is the final paragraph of your essay, you won't need a linking sentence because your conclusion will tie it all together. So just to reiterate, you can either choose from characters, themes, plot, or language. This is an example of plot. However, the same structure that's over here on the side is utilised for all. Remember, you're getting your quotes for this first section here from the stimulus documents in your task sheet. There is an article called Why I Wrote the Crucible. There is also a similarities between McCarthyism and the Crucible, and just a little bio from a website on Senator Joseph McCarthy, and talking about Arthur Miller and McCarthyism. So that is where you get your quotes for this first section from. Then you choose quotes from the play that help support the point you've made with this first quote about McCarthyism. Your structure is also listed in your booklets that you were given at the start of the term, which breaks it down also sentence by sentence, and you can draft with that.